Platt, and today I go back to college. That's next to Platt's Beer of the Week. So the particular beer we have today is the world famous Keystone Light. I've got to shoot you guys straight. This was a big player in my college days. The beer was still fairly new at the time, and it was cheap, and I was a broke college student. So this beer does have a little place in my heart. For those of you that may or may not know, Keystone is part of the Molson Coors line of beers. When it was first introduced, it was just Coors, but now it's Molson Coors, or here in the U.S., Miller Coors, but it's part of the massive corporate behemoth. Even though this beer is produced in Golden, Colorado, it was originally introduced in Chico, California in September 1989. That was about the time I started going to bars and stuff. And I remember when this beer came out, it was really, the thing that made it unique was they referred to it as bottled beer taste in a can. Now today that seems kind of weird, especially in the craft beer world where people are pretty much just going to cans and leaving bottles behind. Back in the 80s, especially before then, if we go back to the early 80s and 70s and before, canned beer was an inferior product. You had the old school pull tabs, and a lot of times those would break off. You had a different lining. They weren't always aluminum cans. Sometimes they were tin or different metals, and you did get a funky taste. Sometime in the late 80s, Coors acquired a new lining system or a treatment or whatever they do to line the cans, and Keystone was kind of the way to introduce that technology, and that it was a really big selling point was you could get bottled beer taste in a can. Now, oddly enough, years later, they started bottling Keystone. You got me on that one. There was a lot of jokes in the business at the time. Just trust me on that one. This brand was created by Coors as their kind of answer to Anheuser-Busch's Natural Light and Busch lines and Miller's Milwaukee's Best. So this is their budget line of beers. Oddly enough, out of all those beers, Keystone probably has the most marketing behind it. Part of the reason why these other beers are cheaper is it's not necessarily cheaper to make those beers compared to the other brands. Like, it's not that much cheaper to make Milwaukee's Best than it is to make either High Life or Miller Lite. Where the savings comes in is the marketing. Is they don't do the kind of marketing. They're not buying Super Bowl ads for Milwaukee's Best, and that's the savings usually gets passed on to you. But Keystone's had some marketing over the years, and some actually decent little marketing campaigns. One you might remember is Bitter Beer Face. They'd be at a party somewhere and someone would drink a non-Keystone, and you'd hear something like, "Ooh, Bitter Beer Face," and then you would see it like an old man with his dentures out, kind of gumming like that. You had Bitter Beer Face. Another one of theirs, I think around 2007, they started coming out with Always Smooth, Even When You're Not. You might would see a gentleman at the bar flirting with a young lady, but he wasn't smooth. But thank goodness his Keystone was smooth. That was another one of their campaigns. Later on, they had Keithstone. Instead of Keystone, they had a fictional character, Keystone. And I wouldn't say he was their Billy D. Williams to Colt 45. You remember, if you're old enough, you remember those commercials. Billy D. was one smooth dude. This was kind of like the redneck take of that, I guess. And then lastly, in 2011, and I wish I'd known this at the time, they redesigned their 30-case pack, and that after you empty down the beer, you can utilize and cut it to play cornhole, which, if you're going to buy a 30-pack of beer, might as well play some cornhole too. So they've done a little marketing over the years at Keystone Beer. Real quick, let's talk about some of their other beers. They've actually developed a line of beers. It's not just Keystone Light. Similar to what Busch and Natural Light, some of these other brands have developed, even though they're budget brands, have developed a line, and Keystone did too. The first two beers to come out were, of course, Keystone Light and Keystone. A lot of people don't remember it, and it ended up becoming known as Keystone Premium. You can still find it today. It's in a red, white, and blue can, but it's tough to find. Keystone Light is obviously the biggest name in that portfolio. A couple years later, in 1991, they came out with Keystone Dry. That was when the dry fad was kind of coming in, and it was their attempt at that. Didn't last long. This beer faded out by the late 90s. 3 years later, though, they came out with Keystone Ice. That was when the ice beer fad was coming through, but that has stuck around. It's still with us today. A little bump in ABV, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. That same year, they came out with Keystone Amber Light. Now, I don't remember this beer, but I wish I would have, because that was a phase in the '90s too, where they came out with amber beers, Amber Light lagers. Michelob Amberbach is the one I remember the most. But there were some of these amber lagers, and a lot of them did them pretty well. So I would like to have seen this product, or like, at least given it a try. Apparently they make something called Keystone 9, 5.9% ABV, but it's only available for the Puerto Rico market. Now, I would like to know the reasoning behind that. It's not the largest beer market in the world. You don't necessarily think of Puerto Rico when you're talking about big beer. If anybody's tried it or knows someone has, please leave a comment down below. I'd like to hear a little bit more on that. And then lastly, in 2020, they came out with Keystone Light Key Lightful, a raspberry and lime flavored beer. I think this is their answer to, I know Natty Light and I think Busch, a couple others have started getting into either hard seltzers or fruit flavored beers or whatever, and this is the Keystone answer to that. Well, before we try this particular Keystone, let's check out the stats. So real quick before we have our Keystone, I want to talk to you about just cheap beers in general. I know they get poo-pooed, and a lot of times they deserve it. They're adjunct lagers, they're macro brews, but I don't think we understand how big of a player they are in the total beer market. Again, a lot of times, and I've talked about this before, a lot of times these are the first beers people have, and their palates are going to be naturally calibrated from that point on, even if they do get into other beers. You'll always remember that first beer, and they're generally these types of beers. I want to share a real quick article I found from 2018 in USA Today, and it listed the top 25 selling American brand, or top 25 selling brands in America that year. Real quick, number 25, Milwaukee's Best Ice. Remember the ice part. 23, Ice House. 22, Steel Reserve. Number 17, Natty Ice. Number 16, PBR. Number 15, Bud Ice. Number 12, Keystone Light. Number 10, Busch. Number 9, Busch Light. And number 8, Natty Light. Roughly 10 of the 25 top selling beers were these budget brands. And they play a huge role. And several more ice beers too, which tells us a lot, because those ice beers are generally higher ABV but same price. So again, the value shoppers feel like they're getting a little more for their buck. But these brands are the kind of workhorse brands of the big breweries. These are the ones that have nice profit margins, and probably Anheuser-Busch, Molson Coors, whoever takes those profits, and that's how they buy that newest, hippest craft brewery that's really kind of blowing up on the regional scene. And so these beers are a valuable player in the ecosystem. They are part of the beer circle of life, whether we like it or not. And again, when you're a college kid, man, it's just all you could really afford. So, every once in a while, get a little nostalgic and try one of those cheap college beers. Speaking of which, it's time. That's a nice, clean, fairly effervescent beer, finger with a white head. Yeah, that is pretty light. Boy, not much on the nose. Definitely no hops. I get sweet, but it's not complex. It's probably adjunct, probably corn. I'm going to guess. Let's give it a try. That is not much there. Goes down easy though, and again, if you think about it, your first beer in college, you're not wanting a ton of flavor, you're not used to it, definitely not wanting hops. I remember drinking Budweiser was kind of my first beers at first, and I'm kind of like, oh, all right, that's got a little flavor. And then when I started drinking these, I'm like, well, God, these are watered down compared to Budweiser and everything. That being said, it's fizzy water with a little bit of alcohol. Yeah, I think it's just sheer adjunct. I'm not getting any hop bitterness. It's slightly sweet, but it's not real sweet, so it is balanced. But it's probably because there's just not enough malted barley in there to bring out a ton of sweetness or malt character. Um, I, I think Coors is more in the corn deal instead of the rice solids that Anheuser-Busch uses. Those are cheaper adjuncts. Pretty simple beer, but gosh dang it, back when I was in college, $3.50 for a 6 pack of Tall Boys, kind of hard to beat. So, um, like some pretty simple beer, but brings back some great memories. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good product. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or beers that you'd like me to try, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.